Alright, so this video is going to be about how to make one of these and why I would possibly want them. So what this is a Bluetooth chip which was originally made for Wii, the console, and it's just connected to a voltage regulator and it's connected to USB. So you can just use it in your computer. And what this is good for is that this chipset is one of the only good known chipsets for if you want to use Dolphin, the emulator, and you want to use real Wii Motes with it. So Dolphin lets you either emulate a real Wii Mote, while the USB Bluetooth adapter is handled by your operating system, or it lets you pass through the entire adapter to the emulator, and that way, if the chip is good, it works perfectly. So you could buy a USB dongle and just emulate it, but for example, it will only handle one controller. It won't do audio, this controller can do audio, and it will just be shit. Meanwhile, with the original one, you can just connect all four. It's going to work with audio and everything. So, this video is aimed for people who have no soldering experience. If you do, you can just read the website, which is the same thing I'm talking about here right now, but it's just in a written format. So, what you want to do is get your hands on one of these and the rest of the components. These chips themselves are pretty cheap. They're like $1 a piece on sites like AliExpress from China. This one is marked used, but it looks pretty unused to me. So they're either new or they're just cleaned up really well. Right, so what you will need to do, this is the schema for these chips. There's two versions, one of the older one, which is on the left side here, and the newer one, which is what I have in my hands now, and it's on the right side here. There's practically no real difference between them, except that the pads on the newer one, the things you'll be soldering on, are just a teeny bit smaller, but it doesn't really matter, they're small anyway. So the only catch this has is that there is 3 of those orange, which is power, and they need to be all connected together. There's also 3 ground points, the black ones, but you just need to connect one of these. So you can just ignore this top part and just solder the bottom pins. Alright, so let's do this. If you want to buy the things, just if you have nothing, if you don't even have a multimeter or a soldering iron, these parts are pretty cheap. This is like a $5 USB soldering iron, but it works quite well. The regulator you will need, the voltage regulator, they're like $2 for 10 pieces. The only real expensive thing is the multimeter, but you don't need it, but you should, so you can test the connections. Otherwise, you'll just go crazy when your chip burns out and you won't know why. So that's good to check your soldering. So let's actually do it. So let me professionally put the camera on top of some organizers. This will do. Alright, so you will want to... Can you see this? Okay, good. So you'll want to wet the sponge and just make it damp so you can wipe your iron in it. Alright, so you will want to start with the USB header. Just put it in the... If you have a third... This tool is called third hand, so if you have a third hand, just use it. It makes your life easier. The pinout for this is actually quite simple. It's just... yeah, it's just a ground, data line plus, data line minus, and positive line, so we'll solder that, and we will use colored wires as on the data sheet to make everything easier. So, let's start. So, this is ground, so we will use black wire for ground. So you'll want to apply some solder to your soldering iron. Like so, hope you can actually see that. Barely, okay. And you will want to just solder the wire in like this. Just hold it there and remove the soldering iron. And tug on it after a few seconds and it should stay so, which it does. And these wires are quite flimsy, so I'm not going to be tugging so hard. Next to it is data line plus. By the way, this ugly, there's a huge soldering rope on there, which is not exactly what you want, so let's try using less solder for the next one. So this is data line plus, the green one. Let's just go. You will want to... The solder follows heat, so what you want is just put the soldering iron on the metal pad here and just kind of heat it up along with the wire, and then just remove the soldering iron, and the solder will follow the heated up metal parts. So that's easy then. Next to it is data line minus, which is white on the diagram, so let's use white wire. If you have just, for example, black and red wires, you can of course do it too, the color doesn't matter. It's just going to be slightly more annoying figuring out which one is which. So that's in, and lastly the power line, which is red. So let's use red. And I melted the wire a bit there, but that doesn't matter. Alright, let's disconnect the soldering iron for now. Alright, so that's soldered. And what you want to make sure, if you can't see and can't tell, you want to check that, you want to continue to test that none of the wires are actually soldered in together. So you will want to switch the multimeter to, let's see, can you see it? Yeah, barely. So you want to switch it to continuity test, which is here, and press the blue button on this multimeter for the continuity icon. And so what this does is, if there's a connection between 2 points, it's going to beep. So what you want to make sure of is that, I hope you could have seen, sorry, is that none of the 2 probe points are connected together. I mean, none of the USB points are connected together. And there's no beeping, so that's good, so let's continue. Next is, but I'm going to be going off my own notes on the wiki page that is going to be linked in the description, so I advise you do the same. Right. Next we will just put the USB cap, which came with the thing on, and just put the wires through, since we know they are soldered in properly now. Which is a bit annoying, and there we go. So if you had the same colored wires for some reason, you would want to continue to test that the wire you're actually going to be soldering next is the same wire. So, for example, if you wanted to know where the data line plus is, and this was the same color as everything else, you would just... Alright, you would need a fucking multimeter. And then you would just... Awesome. You would put one end here on the data plus, and you would try which wire is the data line plus. Or you could just put the head above the middle and try to bend the wire and see which one bends. Right. So that's it. And let's just slide it in. There's a small plastic thing which will hold it together, so that's it. And next you want to take a shrink tube, which can hold 2 wires together. So just make sure you can fit 2 in there, which I know this one can, so I'll just do it. This one is too long, so I'll just cut it in half. And you will want to put it on the black ground wire. And put another ground wire in there. we go. Next we will be soldering the voltage regulator. I hope this one's going to stand more still, and I'll try to do it a bit more in camera so you can actually see something. Let's see. Let's see which one is this. Okay. So the left pad is ground, the middle is power out, and this one is power in. So what you will want to do is the black wires you have here, just twist the ends of them, because you will both be soldering them to the same leg on the voltage regulator. So let's try that. Let's get them even and twist them. Just a shorty twist is good enough. It's not really going to stick together real well, but we're going to solder them together in the next few seconds, so it doesn't matter. Alright. Make sure so you can see. And we will want to make sure that this is soldered in like so and not from the side, because you will want to pull the shrink tube over the wires and over the leg of the regulator. So it's isolated from each other, because that's how I managed to kill one of the chips before. A bit more solder. By the way, these fumes aren't exactly non-toxic if you have leaded solder, so doing this with an open window or in an open room is a great idea. Right, that should be soldered in. Next one is Next one is the. We will want to do both of the red wires next. Let's see. Yeah. So again, twist the ends of the red wires together. And we will be soldering this to the power output of this. And this is so we can later, since there's 3 pads on the Bluetooth chip and 2 of them are next to each other and you need to connect all 3, I'm gonna use 2 wires for that. Going to the chip instead of, and that's a big plop. So let's try to clean it up a bit. And I may have that. There you go. So you want to put 2 wires to the chip, so you can solder one to the single pad and one between 2 pads at the same time, instead of running a wire from the chip to the chip, which would be awkward. Right, and the last one is, let's actually make sure that we can put, let's solder the last one. The last one is power input from the USB. So why do we need this regulator in the first place? This is a 5 volt to 3.3 volt regulator. USB is 5 volts, but the Bluetooth chip uses 3.3 volts, so you want to deliver 3 volts to it, otherwise you will fry it. Which again, I have done before. So you will want to just awkwardly solder the last one. That should do it, and I just freaking forgot to put the shrink tube on it, so I will undo this. And I will cut my shrink tube in half. Again, because it's too big. And you want to put the shrink tube on the damn wire before you solder it. At the bottom of the wire, because the heat spreads throughout the wire and the shrink tube shrinks under heat. So you want it to shrink on the regulator legs and not on itself. So let's solder that back as we had it. Great. And let's see, the shrink tubes should fit. Like so. Let's put a shrink tube on the two red wires. Like so. And let's put a... yeah, there we go, we already have a shrink tube there. And just pull over the shrink tube here. That's why I didn't want such a huge solder block there, because then you can't pull the shrink tube over it. And let's finish. So we're finished with the regulator. And the last thing we need to solder is the chip itself. Now, you will want to use flux for this, because the pads are really small, so there's not much point of contact there. And the first chip I got was pretty dirty, so you want to use soldering flux to clean out the whatever mess is there, so it solders properly, because if you don't, you will solder wire on it, you will tug on it, and it will just come off. And you don't want that. So what I have here is a liquid solder flux. Again, everything I'm using here will be linked to in the description. Not direct bio links, but at least the name of it. So, since I have a really good liquid solder flux, I'll just put it over it. With lots of lovely warnings there. You probably can't see anything because I can barely see it, but there's a nice pink solder flux all over, which should clean out everything, as I said, and you will just want to dry it after a while. And now you should be able to solder properly. So, let's see the scanner. Right. In the original schematics, there's a button. It's for the sync pad, but the button is unnecessary as you can trigger the sync via Dolphin, via the software. So it has a hardware function that you can do via software, so which is why I'm not soldering it, because I find it absolutely useless, and it will just add more things to it. So, let's get started. From the left side you have one of these power lines from the voltage regulator, so let's solder that. If you don't understand something I'm saying, you can just check against the website, which has the same things in it. So you want this not straight and outwards from the chip and not inwards, because that's awkward. So, and also you want to put the plastic end of the wire against the chip, so you don't have a leg sticking out, a huge part of the leg which would potentially break off or to just be shot it. So let's just apply heat against the wire and put it away, and it's soldered, just like that. And let's see what's next. Next is the data line plus, which is green. I'm just going from left to right. So data line plus. Now I'm gonna go to power saving mode. Data line plus on the most right part. Let's just apply heat to it. And I did exactly what I said not to, which is to solder the wire away from the chip. So let's do it better this way, this time. And that's good. Next one, I'll do the power line in the middle instead of the sides, because that's the most annoying part here. And as you can see, I'm already losing myself in the wires. So what you want to do is solder the power pads. There are two in the middle here. You want to solder them together to this one wire, so you kinda want the wire in the middle. You want a bit more solder. But if you heat up the wire, it obviously goes through, so they get kinda hot, so beware if you can get burned that way, if you leave it on for too long. So, ow, that hurts. And I just unsoldered my green wire somehow. I guess that... made that shadow there. Yeah, you just want to tug on the wire every single time you solder something after a few seconds, so you're sure it's solid there. I think I just heat up the chip a bit too much, so it just needs soldered. Alright, let's try again. Let's put it in the middle. Let's put it a bit towards me, away from you, so it's easier for me to solder. Easy view for you, be damned. Alright, so there's some solder now. On the one pad, now on the other, come on. There we go, and just connect it in the middle. There we go, nice huge disgusting blob, which should be connected. Right, let's solder back the green wire we screwed up. The data plus line. Shoo, disgusting white wire. Data plus wire goes here. And I didn't hold it there properly, so just unsolder it. Tag on it, it works. Tag on this one for sure. It works. Then data minus is on the left here. Let's try to real hard not to unsolder the data plus. Maybe not data plus, the power. That looks fine. Let's tag on it to be sure. Great. And the last one is ground from the power regulator going here. How do we do this so it's not through here, I guess? Yeah, so this third hand tool is not really useful. I don't know how I would do without it. It would just be horrible. Let's put my fingers away from there so I don't get burned, and just press against the wire with the soldering iron. And away. And that looks solid. So at this point this should work. So let's assume it does. You should clean your wire soldering iron against the damn sponge, like so. And then just apply a bit of solder all around it so oxidization doesn't kill the tip. Even though the tips are like a door for this cheap soldering iron. And just disconnect the power and leave it there. Right. So again, let's do a continuity test with the multimeter to make sure nothing that's connected. I'm most concerned about these three wires next to each other. Okay, let's undo this. Because they look really close to each other, and I'm not 100% sure that they're not soldered together, but I don't get any beeps. That was me accidentally touching the same thing. And no beeps there either. So, this should work. And to make sure of that, I will connect it to a computer. If you are not... There we go. Let's have the message open. And I will be connecting my nicely made dongle to the computer. And you can see that it found the new device, which is Bluetooth, so wonderful. So the rest is just the rest of the things you need to do is just glue this together with a glue gun, like so. Just put a bit of hot glue on top of the plastic case. Just press it together, and from both sides. Just let me put it in the dark for a bit, so I can show you how that will look like as in Ender's Hut. So in the end you will have something like this, which is a slightly less uglier version of this because I used really long wires there. Oh, and as a final thing, you will want to run a fire under the heat shrink tubes so they shrink with something like a lighter. So I'll just do that now. and you should not be able to pull them back down, which I can't. So that's it. That's how you basically made a dongle. For the setup to your computer, you can check the description or the wiki, where there's a link to the Dolphin wiki for their pass-through page, and they have it all documented there. So that's it, basically.